Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another video. Hope you guys are doing well today. In this video, I want to talk about LazyPeon, his video around Bless Online, and if it was justified, and if his opinions were actually correct, because I don't think they were. But let's get straight into it. Just before that, just quickly, I am actually suffering really badly at the moment with like a chesty cough type thing. I've just drank about half a bottle of cough medicine as well as a load of water that hopefully is going to help get this down and manage to make this video. But if I cough, I will try to mute my mic, and I can only apologize. So let's talk about the LazyPeon and the comments made regarding the great game of Bless Online. So first things first, he talks about performance and how the performance of the game was something that was unacceptable and was a good source of refunds on day one, and he isn't wrong when he makes that comment. A lot of people saw the game and saw how unoptimized it was and how bad it was and how they were lagging and went, I don't want to pay $30 or $40 or whatever for this. And they're quite entitled to that. But realistically, how much of that was server lag and how much of that was just overpopulation lag from a game that was incredibly hyped on Steam? It's not even like the game was quiet. People were talking about it. Massive streamers were coming to play the game. It is not surprising that there were issues. Now, they didn't help themselves. They only had one server on each side to start off with. They had the loading screen issues. They had all this stuff, but ultimately, was the main course of the refunding for performance and optimization? I would say yes, and that's what annoyed me about LazyPeon's video, is that he contributed to that when realistically anybody could have seen that this would have settled down in a couple of days and turned into a very, very well balanced and fun game. So just to talk about optimization and things like that, look at World of Warcraft, a game that has been around now for 14 years, is an incredibly big and successful MMO, but probably the most successful MMO of all time. I don't think I'm going too far by saying that. I played World of Warcraft Warlords of Draenor. I was there for release. I was super happy to get into the game. I was ready to go and kick some ass. And I got banned on day one for supposedly speed hacking because I'd blinked forward during just before a server DC. The game registered it as a speed hack because it had so much lag that the servers were struggling to crash. That's how much lag it was having. And I actually got banned for it, as well as other people I know. At least 3 people in my guild got banned during the release just because they were having so many issues. And this is supposed to be the incredibly polished, the super game, and that's obviously wow. Realistically, this wasn't all that bad. It lasted for about 2 days. He talks about playing on the Japan version and how he played there approximately 2 years ago, which in my opinion just makes him predisposed to a bad opinion about the game. I'm not one to look over the facts. The game has had bad reviews in other regions. I'm not going to try to deny that at all. It really, really has, and that is super unfortunate. But it has, and there's no one's going to tell you differently. It's failed in other regions, and realistically, that's a really bad thing to hear. It's not something you want to hear, but it has. However, if he's played it on these other regions, he's already predisposed to go, this is a failed game, and I've played it before. I'm playing it again, it's going to fail again. The mindset is definitely there to make that sort of assumption, and realistically, that gives you a predisposition that you're already in a bad state of mind to play this game. That's an issue. That's an issue, but that's an issue that you're also spreading to other people by going, yeah, guys, I played this before and it was terrible. Why would you want to play this again? And if it was that bad, if it was something that you really didn't like in the Japan version, why come and play it on NA? That's a huge question. Why would you come and then play it on NA if it was such a bad performance on Japan? He then talks about the 1080 Titan and the processor he has, and how the game was still lagging for him. Now, I knew that it wasn't my PC that was lagging because I've run games that are more graphically intense than this on my PC on max settings. I knew it wasn't my PC. In fairness, he probably knew it wasn't his PC. but he still made the comments about how his PC should have been able to handle it and how it's such a big issue that his PC couldn't. Again, I go to the fact and I go to the point of, who cares? You know it wasn't an issue, and actually the INI changes were up midway through day 2. In fact, early day 2. Which INI changes are a 30-second fix that make a massive difference to the game. Yes, it should have been baseline. It isn't. We make do with that. And the server optimization was increased as soon as they started adding more servers and people re-rolled. That was a massive thing to the game, and realistically, it's not an issue anymore. The only thing I do hope is that they add server transfers in the future so that people can still go back and play with the other servers. User interface lag. So I don't want to talk about this too much just because there is actually a whole subject on user interface later on. There is still input lag. If I go to the menu, there's still this white screen, just a little bit. If I press L and go to my pet, there's sometimes a delay. There you go. You see a little bit of delay with the mailbox there. Is it the worst thing in the world? Not really. It's a little bit of an inconvenience, but I can live with it. Game crashes. So I'm going to talk about this in a future video, so I don't want to talk about it too much. However, a quote from what he said, he felt like he needed to close the game via Task Manager every 30 minutes. Multiple times now since release, I've had 30 plus hours stints in game, actively playing as well, not just AFKing, but actually playing in the game, 30 plus hour stints. Typically game crashes are 1 to 2 minute restarts or maintenance starts now, and I can get around that. Maintenance, it was going to happen, and we'll talk about maintenance a little bit more in another video as well. And then you have the crashes. They still happen occasionally, but they're now one maybe every 25 to 30 hours in my opinion, rather than what was one every 30 minutes. Yes, it was one every 30 minutes, and yes, that's a horrendously bad crash rate, but they just had to stabilize the server. This was something they weren't expecting, and that's kind of their fault a little bit, but hey, they've stabilized it in 8 days. 8 days in this game is incredibly stable, and it can only get better. The loading screen issue, or the landing screen issue, the Bless Online screen that you see as you log in, there was an issue where you got stuck on it for a couple of days. For me, I sometimes had to open 20 tabs to get one that would let me into the character selection screen and actually start the queue. That was an issue. However, that was something that they've already announced was an issue between their servers and Steam servers. Nothing that they could have done directly at the time, so it was just about trying to make the best out of a bad situation. It's something that shouldn't have happened and was frustrating, so I can completely understand why people would be upset about that. However, it was fixed within, I believe, 2 to 3 days. He then talks about how Bless, in all his years of MMOs, is the worst performance game he's ever played. I'm playing right now with max graphics, and just I'm recording. I've had my stream on today. I've got YouTube tabs open. I've got Spotify open. I've got all this good stuff open. My PC is about a £1,500 PC, so it's a decent PC. However, it's certainly not the best in the world, and you can shut down the settings on this a lot more as well if it's something that is incredibly required. So talking about performance, I don't think it's as bad a deal as he made it out to be. Again, it was about server optimization and the INI files, which is already something that, as I've said, easy fixes, and it's already done. Then talks about how early access is not an excuse. The game's been turned out for years in other regions, and nothing has been done to fix performance. However, I'm currently running the game at 60 FPS with max graphics while recording, and the only time I'm having to turn them down now, and I am still turning them down occasionally, is in the desert zones when we are ZVZing. Because typically the fights get quite intense, they're quite elongated at times, and I do struggle sometimes with a little bit of screen stutter, and I'm typically the shot caller. I need to be able to see what's going on in the fight. That's a very specific set where you can't have lag, and realistically, is it the worst thing in the world for me to turn it down from a 5 to a 3? It really isn't, in my opinion. He then talks about how he cannot recommend the game if you want to play on a stable FPS and smooth performance, and how the acceptable thing to say at the time. This is an acceptable thing to say at the time. However, it wasn't an acceptable thing to say a day in. And this is the issue that I had with his video, is that it was very subjective to the time, when actually he could have waited out a day, got a lot better of an opinion, and that opinion would have been entirely changed in my opinion. In my opinion. Many opinions. So let's talk about combat. So he says it's still some of the worst combat you will experience in an MMORPG. So to combat this, I'd like to say WoW literally has a rotation that can be done with cast sequence macros playing the game. Hunters can literally play on a 2-button rotation. My fire mage in WoW, being my fire is supposed to be one of the most complex specs in WoW, I can do on a cast sequence. And that's a crit based spec. I can play that on a cast sequence. So actually any combat is better than that. Any interactive combat, Bless, which is still considered your worst combat versus the most successful MMO of all time, and I'm picking Bless. That says a lot about the game. Bless has an intuitive combat system, and as long as balance is correct and multiple combos are forced, will always remain that. So when we had the 2-span by mages, wasn't very innovative. It was one button. When Guardians were just doing charges and one-shotting people, wasn't a new thing. It wasn't very interactive. However, now Guardians are having to do multi-chain rotations to actually take someone down. Mages are having to link abilities together, and some mages that have already hit max level, already done all this high-end content, are now struggling because they're forced to play the game because it is balanced, which is crazy. So Shiggy, the leader of Tetrafy, the leader of my guild, said it best when he was trying to convince me to play this game. There will be 3 tiers of players in this game. The noobs, who cannot pull off combos and cannot figure out correct stances, positioning, or stance swaps, anything like that. These are the guys that you could put them in WoW with a 2-button rotation and they'd still find a way to do incredibly bad DPS. It happens. There's nothing you can really do about it. There are those people in games. Some people just aren't very good at MMOs. What do you do for those people? Because you can't cater to those people, otherwise the high-end people and the average people won't want to play your game. You then go to the average people, which are the people who are using likely cookie cutter stances and spell rotations, but pulling them off, again, fairly well, averagely well. And then you have the gods of the game. So I was dueling on my Guardian yesterday. I'm able to keep sort of an 85% win rate on my Guardian at the moment for duels. The only people that really give me issue at the moment are Paladins. A very well played Paladin is something that I just cannot beat at the moment. However, they're also healers in duels. They're gonna be good, funny enough. So it's not the worst thing in the world. And I watched another Guardian that took someone that I struggled beating and just massacred him as the same class, same stance setup, just because he was using his abilities in a different way. He was making the most of it. And the description I've got for the godlike tier is the people who know every stance and every combo of a class and able to maximize a class's abilities to the max. For example, a Guardian has a silence and a 50% healing reduction on one of the abilities on the charge in charge stance that nobody has ever used. It has no static animation, which means you can use it while moving. It was unused by noobs and average people because it wasn't heavily spoke about and didn't outperform charge, but now is something that is fantastic. The gods of the game, the top tier people, were people that are already making use of this to gain the most possible sort of benefit out of the class. And I think any game which has that sort of in-depth level of combat differentiation between the different skill types is fantastic. And actually that for me is something that I can get behind. I'm playing my mage right now. You can see in the footage in the background, and I really struggled because I hadn't done any rotation practice. I hadn't checked out what each of the spells do. I'm literally just pressing buttons and hoping things turn out burnt and dead, I guess. Whereas my Zerker and my Guardian, I could give you rotations right now that I know would do a lot of damage, would suit different sort of situations. And that's the difference between good players and bad players. That's not combat, that's skill-based. We then look at the combat So this is a quote from the actual video, that combat was designed by a group of people that have never played an MMO before. It's a very extreme comment when the combat in this game has been likened to the likes of Guild Wars 2 multiple times. Guild Wars 2, something that he later recommends as another MMO that he thinks people would enjoy more than Bless Online. So, is it really that bad? Is it done by people who have never played MMOs? If you're comparing it to a game that has a high-class, decent combat system. We then go through and talk about the 3 reasons why he doesn't like the combat in the game. Responsiveness. People are used to games like WoW and League of Legends, in which animation cancelling and lag buffers are incredible for abilities. So what I mean by that is, if you look in WoW, if you have a 3-second cast time ability, you can actually cast your next spell at about 2.9 seconds, which allows for kind of overlapping of spells, which just helps the fluidity of the game. Bless doesn't have that, it has animation. So I cast this right now, I can't start casting until that's actually gone off and I press the next ability. So when it hits, I can actually use my next ability. What that is good game design, because it actually means that the animations are landing the same time that you're starting to cast the next spells, because that's what the combat should be. You also have things like animation cancelling in other games like League, like WoW, where you try to get off spell off slightly faster or try to get out of the animation slightly quicker by cancelling certain things. Again, not intended, but something that has now become a staple in a lot of games. And the reason why this system isn't liked in this game is because people have got too used to the other way. Once upon a time, this system was still in the game, in every game. So it is a little bit outdated, but is that an issue when people are actually enjoying it? And it's something that is incredibly skill-based. And I talk about that because one of the things he talks about is how he effectively can get stuck in certain rotations because of static fighting, which is my next point about how the animation, there is no animation cancelling. So if you cast an animation, you're stuck in the animation. If the boss does a mechanic during that you have to dodge, you either you're basically out of luck, or you move as soon as you can and you just last minute dodge it, you pop an immunity, things like that. Every single class in the game has either immunities or mobility, which means that every single class in the game can get round these mechanics, so it's not really that much of an issue. You then go into things like it requires knowledge of bosses. If I know this boss every 15-ish seconds or every 5 sword slashes does a conal thing in front of him, I'm not right now on his 4th slash going to cast a 3-second ability. Why? Because I'm never going to get it off before he casts it. It requires knowledge of mechanics, which again brings in a skill-based system, especially when there's no add-ons like Deadly Boss mods to come and help us. There's no add-ons that tell you, right, okay, in 10 seconds you're going to need to move out of this mechanic. It just does the mechanic. You have to learn it as you go, which all of a sudden, again, becomes a skill-based system. Skill-based combat is something that people love because it is something that is highly regarded. We then go through into the last one, which is the fluidity and polish of the game. Now, I can't completely disagree with him here. Some classes, like the Ranger, aren't particularly polished and aren't particularly fluid right now, but that is something that is being worked on. They've already 8 days in announced that they want to rework one of the classes because they don't like the way it's playing, which is Ranger. So they're just showing that they're listening to people when something isn't as fluid and as polished as possible. So the action combat on Zerka isn't for me. That's probably one of the most polished systems, honestly, but it isn't something that's for me, and there's nothing really you can do about it. If that's not a mechanic that you actually want to use, there's no one else's fault. I know people that have done fantastic with it. I know other people that don't like it. It is what it is, and for me personally, I'm just not going to play it. But for others, if that's the type of combat that you like, then it's there, and it will be on other classes soon. So get used to it, I guess. the game with so he goes through and talks about games that are better than combat than WoW than Bless. His first one is WoW, which we talked about already, about how you literally could spam a cast sequence macro in WoW and it would do your rotation for you, and all you have to do is worry about movement. There's no skill involved in that. It literally is one button can take you to victory. Guild Wars 2, of which Bless Online has actually been likened to Guild Wars 2 in many ways. Black Desert Online, of which Black Desert is something that did pull off its combat very well. However, a lot of the Black Desert players have come over to Bless to try it out, which can be proven by the Steam records. You look how much Black Desert's gone down compared to how much Bless Online's gone up. You can genuinely see how different that really is. The last one one of the last ones he talked about is Star Wars: The Old Republic. I haven't played it since the release. I was the world first mercenary level 50, so I have played it a fair bit at release, and it was actually an incredibly boring game for combat. My rotation for mercenary was 2, 3, 3, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, and I still remember that now because of how boring a rotation it was. I ended up healing just because I had to like auto attack heal people, and it was a little bit more fun, but combat and damage in that game just wasn't something that I enjoyed. Whether it's been reworked now, I don't know, but I can only hope for the sake of the game it has. The game effectively became a story-based single-player game that has MMO features later on, rather than an MMO. You then mentions Arcade, Blade and Soul, Elder Scrolls Online, and Final Fantasy XIV, and then goes on later on to when in his recommendations for other games that could potentially fill that void of MMOs that people are looking for, talks about how he doesn't like the combat in Final Fantasy, but it's a very polished game. So he's just contradicting himself in this video. The user interface, now he talks about having no options, and honestly, I have to agree here. If I go into the options right now, we'd look at screen ratio, resolution, brightness, which is screen size, and advanced settings, which is very, very simple bases of settings, sound, and then we go into the interface, game settings, and there's a couple of things here, but not really too much. Nothing that's really going to change scale of UI, movability of UI, things like that. So I have to agree, there's not really too many options here. However, it is something that needs to be worked on in the future, and I think they already know that. Sorry, this is going to be a very long video, so I can only apologise to you guys, but I really wanted to get all this stuff out to you. He then goes on to the first few hours of the game. So in the first few hours, he got to level 33, which is roughly 6 to 8 hours within the game. And he said at no point was he having fun. On the fundamental level, everyone likes different things. Some people like carrots. I hate carrots. Some people like tomatoes. I hate tomatoes. Some people like apples. I really like apples. It's perspective. If he doesn't like this MMO, if the combat isn't for him, if the game isn't for him, don't play it. But how many MMOs in the last 10 years have you actively made a comment to say, I have loved this leveling process. I hate WoW leveling. In fact, I refuse to reroll ults because I hate WoW leveling that much. The only MMO I can honestly say I loved the leveling experience in was actually Star Wars: The Old Republic, and that wasn't for any other reason than the fact it was effectively a story game based on a brand that I was absolutely in love with as a child, made into an MMO later on. So the leveling system was probably the best part of that game. We then go on to the most efficient XP. So the most efficient XP in the game currently is to farm up to level 13 doing class quests and hunts. Level 13 you do the dungeon. You do the dungeon till level 22, then you go to the second dungeon and do the second dungeon till level 31. That is the most efficient XP in the game. And he was talking about how that is so boring for people that he just thinks a lot of people would quit. He then talks about how like the story stops at level 11 and forces you into other parts of the game. Basically forces you to play other aspects of the game. Now that sounds absolutely crazy to me because I didn't buy this game so I could play it. I bought this game so I could look at it in my Steam folder. Apparently. But the story does two things in this game. The first thing it does is it gives you a story, lore, background, whatever you want to call it, to your character and its environment. The second thing it does is it talks about, it takes you to different places in the game where there are things happening, such as story quests, um, such as main quests, such as hunts, all these different stuff happening. That's what the story quest does. It takes you to these different places so that you can enjoy all this different content in the game, which it does incredibly successfully. My Zerka, I leveled to about 15 before I went into the dungeon. I did do the first dungeon till about 18, 19, but I did it when it was actually very difficult, so I did it slowly. In fact, I actually think I did a couple of runs duo as well, just to get some gear, and then I went off and farmed my class quests and farmed some hunts till I got to about 26-ish, of which I duoed the second dungeon till 31. Level 31, I went off and started doing the class quest and started doing hunts. I didn't actually grind until very, very late in the game, which I only did because it was something that I wanted to do to just finish off and get some endgame Dragon Balls content. One of the other things he says is that in the first dungeon, you'll eventually get so much gear, like I have now in my bags, that you have to run back to town to disenchant it. I've never seen someone complain that there is too much loot in an MMO that he doesn't want to carry it. What? That is such first world problems. Oh my god, this game gave me too many items that I don't want them anymore. That's first world problems, and that's not something that I'm even going to acknowledge as a legitimate issue with the game. Just, I can't even. Visuals. Overall, the visuals look like something imported from a mobile game. That's something that actually was something he said, and personally, I could see something like this being in a tier MMO. I don't think the graphics in this game look too bad. I think some of the abilities look fantastic. I've actually had some screenshots, which I'll open up in a second, which, me personally, I think look amazing. The game really shows off how good looking of a game it really can be in some of these pictures. Let's actually have a look. So view screenshots. This is actually what I was doing last night for a while, but you can't really see it all too well in these. But you can see, look at that. Like, look how good that looks. You can't really see them too much, and can I do it here? There we go. That's better. So we then look at this, like, look at just how that looks, right? Look, like, you've got the massive cast in the background, you've got the statue in the background. This game looks fantastic. I zoom in, there's nothing, like, pixelated. The wings are meant to look like that. Like, the game itself looks amazing. One of the paladin abilities just sort of starts sparkling all over the floor. Like, the game itself actually looks really good. It just had to get through that day one where you had to have the graphics low because the server optimization and the INI optimization wasn't quite there yet. That's something that was an issue but isn't an issue anymore. He actually says in that the visuals are entirely subjective, and in my opinion, I agree. It's all perspective based. I know some people that love the look of like anime Blade and Soul type PvP, like type visuals in the PvP that I've seen in that game. And me personally, I've seen it. I'm not a big fan of the way Blade and Soul looks, but I know other people that love it without question. And that's where the perspective comes into it. Different people like different things. Why do you think there are different races in the game? Because some people want to be that huge, big-ass cat. Some people want to be the troll. Some people want to be the little midget Masku. People want to play different things. They want to look differently, and that's where visuals and perspective comes into it. Translations. He then talks about translations, of which, yeah, I'm sorry, NeoWiz, you guys done goofed. The translations are horrific. However, they are slowly improving. I can only hope that they improve a lot quicker. I think in 3 to 6 months we won't even have any translation issues, honestly. But that's something that is a complete guess. We may still do. Just at the rate that they're fixing things, I don't think we'll have too much issues with it in the future. We then go on to talk about the sort of roundup. So the roundup for him about the game was that just stay away from Bless Online. There are plenty of other MMOs that are just better. And I don't entirely disagree. There are other MMOs that are better at individual things. WoW as a whole is an incredibly optimized game. If you wanted pure service stability and optimization, that's where you'd go for an MMO. If you wanted incredible looking art and graphics and different armor pieces that look fantastic, Guild Wars 2 is probably a game. If you want a game that has a little bit of all of these aspects and hopefully more to come in the future as well as its own unique selling points, you have something like Bless Online, which I don't think is a bad option. So in my opinion, MMO players always have something to complain about. Okay, and this is my roundup here. MMO players always have something to complain about. The whole point of an MMO is that an MMO is a unfinished grind. That's what it originally started out as. It was an MMO grind game. Now, you're playing a Korean MMORPG, a game that is a region that is literally known for grind games. So the point I'm trying to make here is that people grind constantly, just like they complain in MMOs. They continue going as long as there's something to complain about, as long as there's something to grind. Now, realistically, there is something to complain about. There has been things to complain about, and they're going to keep complaining about it. The next thing, people have been complaining about 2-spam. People are now complaining about how mages are having to use combos. People are complaining about how rangers are still one of the highest single target burst classes, but don't feel very nice. There's always something to complain about. But if you let that control your gameplay, you're never going to be happy in a game that's based online. That's based for more than one person, truthfully. So guys, I'm going to stop the video here. I believe I've been talking for about 32 minutes on a very sore throat. Overall, I want to talk about LazyPeon. I think it was irresponsible what he did. If he'd have waited another day, he'd have seen the improvements in the game, and I think his opinion would have been drastically changed. I think he'll make another video on Bless Online within 3 months when Assassin comes out, and I will lose a lot more respect for him than I already have when he does it, because he will be coming back to a game that he has slated and actively tried to damage the player base in. But hey guys, it is what it is. If you like the opinions, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, please let me know why. All that good stuff, let me know. Thank you for watching, and catch you laters.